What if every letter you've ever ignored was waiting for revenge? In Marrow Creek, the dead don't stay silent, and one mail carrier is about to learn that some messages are signed in blood. Stay with this one. It'll haunt you long after it ends. Part 1, the undeliverable letter. They call it dead mail. Letters with no sender, no recipient, no purpose anymore. And when you're the last link in the chain, the one tasked with sorting what the world has forgotten, you start to notice things. My name is Cassie. I'm a postal carrier out of a tiny branch office in rural Oregon, the kind with spider-webbed windows, dust on every shelf, and a break room that smells like wet paper and instant coffee. I took the job because it was quiet, because it didn't ask questions. But then came the envelope. It was the kind of letter that shouldn't exist. No zip code. The ink was faded almost to nothing. The name, Marrow Creek, was written in looping, cursive across the front. The return address was smeared into a bruise of gray like it had been touched too many times. It was thick too. Not with paper, but something that flexed slightly when I pressed it between my fingers. Not quite soft, not quite firm, almost alive. It wasn't in our system. I checked 3 times. But when I slid it into the outgoing tray out of habit, the automated reader stamped it. Routed, en route to destination. That night I dreamed of woods, thick, choking with mist. Pines that curled unnaturally upward like fingers reaching for something just out of reach. I wandered down a dirt road where mailboxes leaned like broken teeth, and in the distance, bells. Soft, rhythmic. Funereal. When I woke up, the dream clung to me like damp clothes. I tried to shake it, filed it away as stress, maybe some undigested dinner. But when I checked my route the next morning, something was different. A new address had appeared. An odd detour. GPS coordinates instead of a street. I don't know why I followed it. Curiosity? Restlessness? Something else? The road grew narrower, the trees thicker. My phone lost service. The sun never broke through the canopy, and soon even the dirt road felt like it didn't want to be found. But I kept going, because something was pulling me forward. Not physically, not yet, but inside, like a string tied to my ribs, and then I saw it. Marrow Creek. It wasn't on any map, but it was there. A town frozen in rot. Shingled roofs caved inward like broken crowns. Storefront windows fogged with mold and grime. A diner sign hung askew above a door that creaked open with the breeze. But despite the decay, everything was in place. Chairs pushed in, tables set, a rocking horse still slowly moving on a front porch. It didn't look abandoned, it looked preserved. The strangest part, every house still had a mailbox. I parked at the edge of what must have once been Main Street. The silence was oppressive, thick and vibrating. Not empty, but waiting. My fingers tightened around the envelope. It was still warm, pulsing faintly, like something inside was stirring. I don't remember deciding to deliver it, I just started walking. The mailbox on the corner creaked when I opened it. Empty. I kept moving, drawn to the only building that looked even remotely intact, the post office. Its glass was intact, the door unlocked. Inside, the air was dry and thick with the smell of parchment and mildew. Dust motes hung like stars, undisturbed. And then she appeared, a woman, pale, hair the color of old bone, skin stretched thin over high cheekbones. She stood behind the counter without a sound. I hadn't heard her enter. She wasn't there a second ago, but she smiled, a thin, tired thing, and held out her hand. I gave her the letter. She didn't open it, just pressed it to her chest like a child might a long-lost keepsake. Then she said it. "We've been waiting for you." I couldn't breathe. My heart beat too fast, too loud. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes, they weren't lifeless. They were ancient, watching me like I was something to be read. I turned and fled, out into the gray air, back to my car. Except, it wasn't there. Just a road that didn't end, and mailboxes that hadn't forgotten their names. And the letter. I swear I still felt it in my hand, even though I had already delivered it. Part 2. Postmarked with names that shouldn't be spoken. I should have driven, should have run until the trees disappeared in the rear view, but I didn't. My car was gone, the road behind me dissolved into fog, and every direction felt like forward, like Marrow Creek had swallowed the world and all that remained was here. The silence pressed against my ears like deep water. I stood in the middle of the street, the envelope still phantom warm in my palm even though I'd handed it over. My feet moved before I thought to stop them, guiding me deeper into town. The houses were wrong. They weren't abandoned. They were sealed, nailed boards over windows, doors bolted with rusted chains and thick wax seals pressed with unfamiliar symbols. But from within, I heard them, knocking, soft, deliberate, not frantic like someone trapped, but steady, like a polite visitor patiently awaiting an answer. I passed a storefront, a butcher's shop with clean white tiles behind shattered glass. The hooks inside still dripped, but the stains weren't red. They were black, oily, moving. Every mailbox I passed seemed to lean toward me, not physically, but I felt their presence, like eyes, waiting to blink. I don't know why I went back to the post office. Maybe I thought it would offer safety, a sliver of normalcy. But the moment I crossed the threshold again, I realized the building wasn't just intact. It was maintained. The floors were swept clean. The walls gleamed with fresh whitewash. Flickering oil lamps cast golden light that somehow didn't chase away the shadows, only made them dance. And the letters. God, the letters. Thousands lined the walls, stacked in pigeonholes, piled in neat towers that defied gravity. Each one identical. Aged cream envelopes, black ink, addressed in the same looping handwriting. No stamps, no return addresses, but the names, they shouldn't have been real. I picked one at random and my hands began to shake. To Arthur M. Winslow. Status: deceased, March 12, 2023. That was my grandfather. He died last spring. Cancer. Peacefully, the doctors said. I picked up another. 2. Emily Rourke, status deceased, November 8, 2021. Emily, my old roommate. She took her own life, left behind nothing but silence and a half-filled journal. The air grew heavy. Every breath tasted like mothballs and candle wax. I looked up and saw movement in the far corner of the room. A figure stepping out of the shadows like he'd always been there. A man, in a postal uniform like mine, only older, stained. The fabric frayed at the edges and stitched along the seams with red thread. His badge was rusted over, unreadable. His hat was crooked on his head, and his mouth was sewn shut. Thread, black, pulled so tight I could see the skin straining. I froze. He didn't speak. Couldn't. But he lifted one gloved hand and pointed to the center counter, to an open ledger, thick and bound in leather that looked far too much like skin. I stepped closer. The book's pages were yellowed and fragile, covered in neat columns of names and dates and notations, and there it was. Cassie Morgan, date of entry. Today status, in transit. My hands trembled as I turned the page. The ink wasn't dry. The man nodded once, slowly, like he was confirming a delivery. Then he stepped backward into the dark and vanished, the way he'd come. I backed away from the book. My pulse thundered in my ears, and then the bells started again. Not from the church tower. No, from the mail slots. Every box, every pigeonhole, every slot in the wall began to ring. Tiny brass bells, hidden behind the wood and letters, all chiming in unison. It wasn't music, it was an alarm. The letters began to tremble, one slid free and fluttered to the floor like a dead moth. Another followed, then a dozen, then a rainstorm of paper that filled the room with the rustle of dried leaves and funeral veils. I ran, out the door, into the fog, but it followed. The bells rang inside my ears now. My blood throbbed with their rhythm. The town was awake, Mailboxes creaked open as I passed. Letters leaned toward me on invisible strings. The knocking in the houses grew louder, faster. I passed a shuttered window and saw fingers, pale, long, tapping against the inside glass like metronomes. And above it all, something whispered my name, not shouted, not spoken. Whispered, as though the wind itself had memorized me. I ran until I couldn't breathe, until the street curved back on itself and I found myself once again before the post office. No matter which way I turned, the town led me back to its center, to the ledger, to the page with my name, in transit. Not alive, not dead delivered. Part 3. The letters know what you did. I tried to leave. The morning fog never burned off. It thickened, like wet wool smothering the streets, curling through the cracks in the walls, whispering my name in a voice that sounded almost like mine. Still, I walked. Past the post office, past the chain-bound houses. I followed what looked like the only road out of Marrow Creek, a crooked path lined with warped street signs and crooked telephone poles. No birds, no wind, only the sound of my own footsteps and the soft thump-thump of my mailbag against my hip. I walked for what felt like an hour, then 2, and I arrived, back at the same intersection. The same leaning stop sign, the same street lamp flickering like a dying eye. I tried another way, a side road with gravel crunching beneath my boots, leading past a chapel that hadn't been there before. The doors were ajar, stained glass shattered like open wounds. I didn't go inside, and still, no matter which path I chose, the fog curled inward, and I ended up back again. The town was folding in on itself, like it didn't exist on a map but inside a maze built from my own memories. When I finally returned to the motel, the only building not boarded shut, I dropped the mailbag on the floor. That's when I noticed it felt heavier. I hadn't picked up anything. I opened it. Letters, dozens, envelopes with no stamps, no return addresses. All in the same old-fashioned cursive, the ink deep and dark like spilled wine. None of them were there this morning. Hands trembling, I opened the first one. Inside was a transcript. Typed. Clean. Precise. My voice. Word for word. A conversation I had with my sister 7 years ago, late at night on her back porch when I thought no one could hear us. I can't stand him anymore, I had said. Sometimes I wish he'd just disappear. I remember saying it. I remember the guilt, but no one else could have known. I opened another, a letter addressed to me, but the inside bore no greeting, just a description. Cool, unfeeling. February 16th, 2018. The dog was already in the road. You could have swerved. You didn't. I blinked. My throat tightened. I opened a third. You were texting. No signature, no judgment, just fact. I dropped it. My breath was a saw blade in my chest. I dumped the bag out onto the motel bed. The letters kept coming, spilling across the blanket, fluttering like wings. Every one of them knew something. Secrets I'd buried so deep they barely felt real anymore. Regrets I'd paved over with time, with justifications, with silence. One by one, they exposed me. You told Emily you'd call back. You didn't. You laughed when Arthur cried. You pretended not to hear the crash. You waited. By the time I finished reading, the lamps buzzed and dimmed. The fog had seeped under the doorframe. My ears rang with static. Then came the sound. A soft shuff-shuff of paper sliding across wood. I looked down. A letter had been slipped under my door. I crept toward it, knees weak, mouth dry. When I picked it up, I didn't open it, because I wasn't alone. There was something on the other side of the door. The knob turned, once, gently, like someone testing it. Then came a whisper, a voice low and broken and familiar. You were the one driving, Cassie. I stumbled back. You didn't swerve. The whisper wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. It was final. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. Instead, I grabbed the letters and shoved them into the fireplace. I lit a match with trembling fingers and watched as they caught. The ink blistered, the paper curled, and yet... The next morning, the mailbag was full again. Same letters, same words, fresh, crisp, undamaged, like I'd never touched them. The motel mirror reflected someone who looked like me, but paler. Eyes sunken, lips moving on their own, whispering things I couldn't hear. Behind me, something flickered. A man in a postal uniform, watching. I blinked, and he was gone. The letters are part of me now. I can't leave them behind. Marrow Creek doesn't let go, it just waits for the truth, for the delivery, and I think mine's next. Part 4, Return to Sender. There's something unnatural about stillness, not peace, not calm. Stillness like a held breath, like something watching you from inside the walls, waiting for you to move first. That's how it felt when I returned to the post office. Like the whole town had gone quiet just to hear what I would do next. The oil lamps inside still flickered. No one ever refilled them. No one ever turned them off. Yet they never died, and in the shadows, he waited, the dead postman. His uniform hung loose over skin the color of old paper. His eyes didn't blink. His lips were stitched tight. Thread pulled so taut I could hear it creak when he moved his jaw. Stepped forward, clutching the newest letter I'd found in my bag. "Who's writing these?" I asked. He said nothing, just turned, slow as a clock's hand, and walked into the back hall. I followed, down a narrow staircase behind the sorting room, where the light grew dimmer with every step. The air turned thick, choking with mildew and the sharp sting of old ink. At the bottom, he opened a door. The hinges screamed, and beyond it, a room made entirely of mail. The walls were built from envelopes. Thousands, maybe millions, of them. Some yellowed, others fresh as rain, stacked to the ceiling, packed so tightly you could hear the paper breathe when you stepped close. And the smell, like a library sealed too long, like time gone sour. The postman stepped aside, gesturing me in. I moved slowly, my boots crunching, on crushed postcards and letters scattered across the floor like bones. Each one had something different. Apologies, confessions, warnings, questions, cries for help. Please not to be forgotten. Tell Sarah I loved her. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. He never knew I was his father. We're still here, all written by hands long dead, addressed to the living, letters that never made it home. I turned in a slow circle trying to take it in. This town, I whispered. It's some kind of, what, afterlife post office? The postman didn't answer, but I saw it in the way he looked at the letters, reverently, like each one was a soul. And then I saw the desk at the far end of the room, ancient, dust-choked, carved with names and stamps and postmarks burned into the wood. Behind it, a wall lined with black and white photographs, mail carriers, men and women, all stiffly posed, all with the same dull stare. One of them caught my eye, not because of the uniform, but because it was me. Me, standing behind that very desk, mouth closed, eyes hollow. Same face, same jaw, hair tied the same way I wore it just last week, but older, duller, like I'd been worn down, stamped out. "No," I muttered, stepping back. The postman raised a hand, slow and shaking, and pointed to the floor. There, half buried beneath a pile of scattered envelopes, were dozens of letters, all written in my handwriting. I picked one. Up it was addressed to Marrow Creek. Inside, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I was scared." Another, "Please let me go." Another, "I'll be good. I'll carry the messages. Just don't leave me here alone." My hands were shaking now. My mouth felt full of cotton and ash. I backed away, eyes darting between the photograph, the letters, the postman. "I don't belong here," I whispered. The postman tilted his head. And then, from every wall, every pile of letters came a sound. Whispers, dozens, hundreds, thousands of voices, soft, cracking, dry like parchment rubbed together. Read us. Don't forget us. You opened the route, you're the new sender. I ran, out of the basement, up the stairs, back into the fog-stained air. But the sky above Marrow Creek had changed. It wasn't just gray anymore. It was paper-colored, and in the distance I heard the mailbox bells chiming, not ringing, chiming, each one a name, each one a life. And I knew they weren't waiting for letters anymore. They were waiting for me. Part 5. Dead mail doesn't stay quiet. You can feel when a place is waking up. It doesn't happen with light or movement. It happens with the sound of breath that isn't yours. The town of Marrow Creek was changing. I stepped out of the post office, the sky a dull, bruised gray, more like rotted paper than clouds. The streets I'd walked just hours ago, now twisted. Buildings leaned at odd angles. Chimneys wept smoke that didn't rise, but dripped downward, vanishing into the dirt. And then the groaning started. Low, trembling. A sound not from wood or stone, but from within, like the town was clearing its throat. I turned toward the storefront beside the post office, a barber's shop long shut, just as the windows bled thick black ink. It oozed down the glass like tears, staining the fog below. A letter fluttered past me in the air, then another, and another. Soon they swarmed, letters flying through the fog like moths drawn to flame. They circled, dove, hovered inches from my skin before darting away. I looked down at my mailbag. It was full again, heavier. I hadn't touched it since the basement. It never emptied. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned and saw them. The people of Marrow Creek. Dozens, silent, drifting. From alleys rising from the fog like smoke-made flesh. All translucent, eyes sunken and soft as old ash. Each one pressed a sealed envelope tight to their chest, as if it was the only thing keeping their bones from falling apart. They stood motionless, their heads tilted toward me like sunflowers, to the sun. A girl stepped forward. She couldn't have been more than 7. Hair in soft braids, torn dress clinging like wet paper to her legs. Her eyes were hollow, not with sadness, but with memory. She held out a letter, small, folded neat, the seal pressed with a tiny thumbprint. I didn't take it. She didn't move, just waited. I turned and ran, past the broken buildings and bleeding glass, past the motionless crowd and the ink-wet cobblestones. I ran until the fog grew thicker, until the world narrowed to just the sound of my boots and the hammering in my chest. Then it opened. The edge of town, but it wasn't an edge. It was a plain. And through that plain stretched a trail of mailboxes. Not just one road, hundreds, thousands, spiraling outward into infinity like veins, like cracks in glass, each lined with rusted metal boxes, all slightly ajar, all waiting. No. I turned in circles. The fog curled and shifted, revealing mailbox after mailbox, some new, some nearly rotted through. A forest of forgotten correspondence, a graveyard without headstones. I dropped to my knees and tore the mailbag from my shoulder. Letters spilled out, pages fluttered, envelopes opened themselves, whispering soft as breath. I grabbed a match from my coat pocket, lit it, held it to the canvas. The flame caught. For a second, it felt real. Like I could still fix this. Like fire could undo whatever sickness this place had put inside me. Then the bag screamed. Not the fabric, not the fire, the mail. A deep, human sound. Dozens of voices trapped in paper, shrieking through ink and thread and dried glue. The flame went out on its own. I stumbled back. The bag still smoldered, but the letters inside shifted, undamaged, their corners curling like fingers reaching out. I picked one up, hands trembling. It wasn't addressed to anyone I knew. Just a name, a liar. I opened it. I never got to say goodbye. Tell her I was sorry. For the accident, tell her I didn't mean it. The wind stopped. Dead silence. And then, from behind me, a scream. I turned. The church. Its steeple bent. The bell twisted like melted bronze. And from inside the wall, behind the stained glass, man's face pressed to the stone, mouth open, eyes wide with pain, screaming. The same voice I'd just heard in my head. I took a step back. Another. He faded, melded into the wall like smoke into concrete. I looked at the letter again. The words had vanished. In their place was a new sentence. Thank you, and I felt it. A pull in my chest. Not sharp, but real. Like something had been scooped from inside me and replaced with silence. I dropped the letter, looked at the others. They whispered to me, read me, release me. Just one more. Each voice familiar. Each one clawing at memories I hadn't let myself feel in years. Regrets, secrets, names. The bag pulsed at my side, and I knew then, reading them sets the souls free. But every one I read takes something from me, a memory, a feeling, a piece of whatever makes me me. And I was running out. Part 6, signed in blood. The original letter was gone. Not lost, not stolen, just blank. I found it at the bottom of the bag. The one letter I'd meant to deliver when I first came to Marrow Creek. The one from the woman in the nursing home, scrawled in shaky ink, meant for a brother she hadn't spoken to in 50 years. But now the envelope was unmarked. No stamp, no name. The paper inside was pure white. No folds, no creases, no trace of ink. It hummed in my hands. Soft, like breath against the skin. I stood in the center of the post office, surrounded by dust and silence. The air was thick with the scent of scorched paper and rain that never fell. Behind the counter, he waited. The postmaster, dead, but never still. His uniform was threadbare now. Skin stretched tight over cheekbones like wax left too long in the sun. His eyes were empty, not sockets, but holes like ink stains torn into paper. Every message needs a sender, he rasped, and every town needs a hand to carry the weight. I stepped back. I'm not part of this place. I didn't choose any of this. The postmaster tilted his head. Didn't you? He held up a leather-bound ledger, old, bloated with time. The names inside were written in red. Hundreds of them. Some crossed out, others faded to smudges. I found mine, Cassandra B. Langley, and watched as the ink began to fade. My name dissolving. In its place, blank lines not erased, emptied. I clutched the blank letter tighter. I'm done. I'm going home. There's always a price. He gestured to the room around me. Walls of letters piled high, thousands of them. Paper whispered as it shifted, curling toward me. So many names, so many voices waiting to be carried forward. You can leave, the postmaster said, but you'll never not hear them again. He stepped closer, one gloved hand reaching out, tapping the side of his head. They'll speak through every envelope, every receipt, every sticky note, every post-it. He grinned, on teeth like broken stamps. Every word on paper will scream. I looked at the walls again. Some of the letters were crying, some laughing. Not joyful laughter, desperate. Like being remembered was the only thing that kept them from rotting into dust. The postmaster moved behind the counter, pulled something from beneath it. A uniform, dark gray, old, trimmed in red thread. Name patch already stitched to the front. Cassie, you already signed, he said. What? He held up the blank letter, but now there was ink. Blood red. It twisted across the page like veins, forming a single sentence. I accept. My hands began to burn, not fire, but memory. I was forgetting things. The name of my high school, the smell of my mother's perfume, the face of the man I almost married. Gone. Like mail returned to sender. You can stay, the postmaster said, softly. Become what this place needs. or walk out. But every letter you touch, you'll hear the dead screaming to be read. I looked at the bag. It twitched. Something inside moved. A letter curled its edge over the canvas, lipped like a finger tracing its way toward my skin. The girl in braids appeared at the door, still silent, still waiting. Behind her, the other townspeople gathered. Specters, ghosts, echoes, some crying, some smiling, all holding envelopes, all hoping I'd read them. I took the uniform, put it on. It fit. Of course it did. The postmaster stepped back, dissolving into the fog, and I stepped forward. Now, the neighborhood is quiet. The truck hums. It's new, but the radio doesn't work. Every station plays a voice reading names over and over, like a roll call for the forgotten. I pull up to the house. Mrs. Kilpatrick opens the door, friendly, a little confused. "Oh," she says. "Are you the new one?" I smile. "No, say, I've been doing this a long time." She nods and closes the door. I climb back into the truck. The bag on the passenger seat trembles. One envelope slides from its mouth. White, unmarked. Waiting. I don't open it. Not yet, but I will. I always do. If that letter gave you chills, imagine what's still sealed in the bag. Hit like if you're brave enough to open the next envelope. And subscribe, because in Marrow Creek, the dead always send follow-ups.